Hello, everybody. Welcome this morning to CoMotion LA. Welcome to your second panel on the 2028 Games. I'm Julia Thane. I'm founding partner of the climate and mobility advisory firm 2 Degrees and Rising, and I have the absolute pleasure of moderating the panel today about how we can learn from Vancouver 2010 Winter Olympics and Paralympics and the Paris 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games to deliver in LA. We have a large panel today of some of the most interesting people, I think, at this conference, although I'll let you all also be the judge of that. Starting with Laura Rubio-Cornejo, who's the general manager of LA Department of Transportation. She headed up transportation at Pasadena and served as the deputy executive officer at LA Metro. We have Ernesto Chaves, who works for the Office of Strategic Innovation at LA Metro, and he led LA Metro's 2028 Games Task Force, developing a mobility concept plan that he now has the maybe distinct pleasure and responsibility of implementing, Ernesto. Bon chance. And then Marie-Cécile Tardieu is the COO of Business France, which is a national agency that grows foreign investment into France, and she's going to be speaking to us about Paris. Matt Petersen, who's the president and CEO of a fantastic local nonprofit called Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator, which is focused on transportation electrification, clean energy, and sustainable cities. He was also the City of LA's first ever chief sustainability officer. So we're going to really grill him about the sustainability of the games and adaptation and mitigation for that matter. And then Dale Bracewell. So Dale Bracewell, just to my left, is the principal of Mobility Foresight. He provides strategic advisory services about sustainable transport planning and how you can look at those with a forward-thinking mindset. And he comes to us from Vancouver and from the Vancouver 2010 Winter Games. So we're going to dive right in here, and I'm going to start in the obvious place, which is let's compare Paris and LA. And Marie-Cécile, I want to start with you because I don't know if you all remember this, or maybe you actually have the pin, but Paris and LA went head-to-head to try to host the 2024 Summer Olympic Games and Paralympic Games. And Paris won. We are not happy about that, but maybe we are. And I want to talk, Marie-Cécile, with you about what was Paris's vision for the Games? How well did you deliver on that vision? And be honest with us, how well did you deliver on that vision? And what do you think will be similar about the 2028 Games in LA versus what you just experienced in Paris?
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Julia, for your very difficult question to begin with. As you may have noticed, I'm the only one who is not an expert in mobility. So you must be thinking, well, hell, what she's doing here. And how do you succeed? In fact, you succeed if you have the right people with you. And if you can bear with me just a minute, I would like to say that I'm here at CoMotion with 7 French companies that succeeded in the Games. I will give their names, and they should be here around, and you can meet with them. So Flowbird, if they can maybe show their hand. Matawan.
We'll do a little clap after.
Flowly. So they specialize in mobility as a service. Then in infrastructure, we have Froscher, Sogeclair, We Maintain, and in security, we have Block Access. So the way to succeed is to have the right people around you. But to be a bit more precise about what was the vision of Paris Games, the motto was Games Wide Open. And I think we succeeded, first of all, for maybe 2 main reasons. Consistent, we were totally consistent, and timing. Totally consistent means that when you have a motto, Games Wide Open, you have to deliver everything around your idea. So Games Wide Open means that it was games in the city, accessibility. Totally, Games Wide Open was also for people to participate in the games. The number of volunteers we had, and we had something nobody had done before, a marathon. People, ordinary people just like me, could run a marathon like the Olympic athletes. And we were consistent in all the decisions made, especially on sustainability. Second point why we succeeded is timing. Timing is everything in this kind of event. You've got to deliver in time all your infrastructure. you've got to deliver in time during the event to be sure that people can access to the places they have to go on the right time. So that is why transportation is really a main critical criteria for success. And maybe a few words on the similarity between our two games. And the similarity, of course, will be success. I'm sure those games will be really successful. But the similarity is mainly, I would say, innovation and sustainability. Innovation, maybe people didn't expect Paris to be so innovative, and we surprised people. And I'm sure nobody will doubt about how LA will be innovative. We don't know yet what will be the game, what will be society, what will be the digital services in 2028. But I'm sure it will be great. And sustainability, it's something that now we have to think about when we organize big events. Nobody can begin to think of an event without thinking of sustainability. And lastly, what is, I think, something that is really the same between our two cities, Paris and LA, is we are brands. People, when they think about these cities, they have a dream. They see something. It means something. And we have to deliver what people want to see as the best of those cities. We succeeded in Paris in sending the image of what people wanted to see of Paris, the best of Paris. And the success will be how can you convey with your games the best of what people know of what is Los Angeles.
Wow, Marie-Cécile, I want to invite you to a weekly pump-up talk with everybody who has to deliver the 2028 games. That was beautiful. And I actually didn't know that about Games Wide Open, but I think that really talks about how Paris, LA are both going to be cities and regions where the games are going to be embedded within them. We still have to live, we still have to move things. And this is actually a perfect segue to Laura, because Laura, I remember when you took the job as LADOT General Manager, you knew that the next several years were going to be chock full of not just the games, but also the World Cup and also the Super Bowl and also just the number of people who are taking trips around the city and region all the time. And even more maybe transportation challenges than it had been in the past. So for you, what was exciting to you about that? How did you start thinking about leveraging the games for your benefit? And even to this point about Games Wide Open, was there some sort of mantra that you just whispered to yourself every morning before you got into the office?
Yeah. So coming in, to the city, yes, I knew we had, in 4 years the games. Prior to that, a number of other events. And so what was exciting to me was just really the opportunity to leverage those events as a way of building out infrastructure. Infrastructure that would align with the vision of having a transit-first games experience and having the opportunity before that with the Super Bowl, with the World Cup, with, I believe, we have, and I'm going to mess up the name, so my apologies to all the fans out there. Golf and the tennis. I'm sorry.
There's a lot of things.
I'm sorry. You all know what I'm talking about.
It's too many to remember. We get it, Laura.
I'm focused on getting you there. But, and to have the opportunity to build on all of those individual events as a way of showing Angelinos that you can get around the city in a way that doesn't always require a car. Now, what that means is that it is my responsibility and Ernesto's to make sure that we are building the infrastructure that supports that. And that's what was exciting to me. Having this window in time to build that infrastructure that will be built in time for the games, but that will be a legacy and that will hopefully start to really kind of change the way people think about how they get to events. And so really excited about that opportunity to do that. I think the idea of what Paris did of having, wide open, I think we are following that. Mayor Bass has made it clear she wants every Angelino to be able to enjoy the games. And so that means that it's not just about the ticketed spectators, but it's every single Angelino who wants to experience the games. And so building on having public events where they can enjoy the games and the games experience and how do we build that into our transportation infrastructure so that as individuals are traveling to and from the venues, there's also opportunities nearby to really leverage assets that are Los Angeles, assets that really highlight our history, our rich culture, our diversity, open spaces, and how do we build all of that and weave it all in together. And really excited about just having this opportunity to build out infrastructure, but not in a silo, really making it part of the urban fabric in a way that, us as planners get really excited about how do we leverage what is us, what is Los Angeles, and how do we just make that part of the games experience.
Fantastic. And I love that idea of like, we can do this as the opening mantra of the day. You also mentioned Ernesto and having to partner very closely with Ernesto. So I'm going to put you on the spot now to speak about LA Metro. And I would say one thing I'd love to see is an org chart of just how we're going to be delivering the games and what that's looking like in terms of roles and responsibilities. And I hoped you could speak to us, Ernesto, about what you think LA Metro's role is right now, what you think that's going to be as we get closer to the game, and what it will look like after the games, and especially all these sort of really helpful planning documents you all are putting together to guide those decisions.
Sure, thank you. So we started about a couple of years ago, a little more than 2 years ago, working not alone with our partner agencies, the LADOT, Caltrans, Metrolink, the commuter rail here in Southern California, on a mobility concept plan, which is what you alluded to earlier in the introduction. And that just sort of sets the vision or the basis of what we want for the games in terms of mobility. I think I would split it into two. It's really the game's essential needs, right? Getting people to the venues, and there's a huge operational challenge there. And then the legacy projects that Laura was speaking to. So let's talk about those two separately for a second. In terms of our role for the games operations, we're going to be the primary transit provider for the games. It's something we can't do alone. It's something we can't do with the capacity or the supply of buses that we have today. So there, it's a huge challenge that we're working with Laura and with the rest of the agencies in Southern California to plan for that challenge. And during the games, we're going to be operating ideally that enhanced transit system that will deliver people to the venues. Again, working with our partners. After the games, we want to. I think that the legacy of that would be that additional level of coordination that we've created, that partnership with the different transit agencies to get people to places. I think that's going to be a legacy of the games as well on the operational side. On the capital side or the projects, we have for the past 10 plus years been working on heavy transit capital investments, right? $17 billion plus of investments into our rail system, which are all going to be great during the games. Again, it's kind of our foundation. But we wanted to do more projects that would be complementary to those in order to make the experience the best experience they can have. So we had the fortune to be in Paris as well during the games, and that's one of the things we really observe, and I think with a little bit of jealousy as well, that the headways, right? How easy it was to get around, how you almost didn't have to think about it because it was so easy to get around. I think those are the kinds of things that we want to also focus on in our planning, and we want to see as legacy as well. And we can talk about that more a little later, I think, in terms of legacy. But our role, to answer the question for now, it's obviously planning for operations, planning for legacy, and hopefully after the games, legacy on both sides.
Yeah. And just bridging that a little bit with Matt and your role heading up LA Clean Tech Incubator and just in NGOs generally in LA, I would love for you to talk a little bit about what is the role of NGOs in helping to deliver the games, helping to deliver the legacy of the games, and maybe even holding us accountable for having some legacy of the games.
Good question. Let me just start by saying it's great to be back here at CoMotion. LACI was proud to help John and the team launch CoMotion a few years ago, and this is a great convening and continues to be, and such an important conversation. LACI, since 2018, we decided to step into the fold and say, hey, we want to convene the region, the key players around how are we going to accelerate transportation electrification by the time the world arrives in 2028? Can we envision and manifest a future where you could move people and goods carbon-free through Los Angeles? And that, included a extensive roadmap we developed with the mayor's office and Metro and the utilities and the county and other key players, and set those targets. Now we're only a few years left, and we've more recently put out a clean energy roadmap that LACI created. So we're really interested, invested in how we take advantage of this opportunity. So I don't want to speak on behalf of all the community organizations and NGOs who wouldn't pretend to do so. I think everybody's excited about the potential as well as concerned about how do we make sure we don't miss this opportunity to really bring benefits to frontline communities that face disproportionate share of air pollution and transportation challenges. And economic and socioeconomic challenges, and all the things that we know that so many disadvantaged communities face. So how do we leave those lasting investments and not just make it great to get to the venue and back to your hotel? And we're really focused on those sorts of solutions. So we've been looking into how to pilot solutions and figure out what works and what doesn't, and how to scale what works. At the same time, we've been mapping and assessing where's there available electricity, where does charging infrastructure need to go to ensure that those supplemental buses that Stephanie and Ernesto and the team at Metro are going to have to move around. Hopefully as many of those are electric as possible to supplement the great fleet that Laura and her team have built at LADOT with the Dash buses, existing electric buses at Metro, and the other regional transit agencies. I mean, it is worth saying, Paris is one regional, one government and one transit agency, and there are 88 cities alone in LA County, plus the unincorporated county area. And I don't know how many transit agencies. I think there's several dozen. And so all that coordination, back to your point, is really important. How do we get people to collaborate in a way that we don't always get the liberty and the luxury to do so, when it's more important than ever in this moment to show the world LA and California as leadership, not just on transportation and transit, but on climate. And so, of course, as an incubator of startups, we hope to see as many of those companies in their technology showcased and used to help deliver the games. But back to your question, I think there's an opportunity for everybody to be part of the games in a way. Like, we didn't wait and ask for permission. We just, of course, we talked to the mayor and the folks involved and said, hey, we want to do this, or can we join forces? And we brought in the California Resources Board, the California Energy Commission, the key state agencies that are also part of this, and look at how do we deliver these resources. And yet at the same time, we're at this moment in history and inflection point. I just walked in a little late to prep for this conversation because I was on a conversation with mayors across the country focused on how are we going to lead on climate in this moment with this new administration. And the same thing is going to be the questions of how we're going to get the federal partners to fund these resources. So we're at this moment, but to my point is really everybody should just lean in and do what they think they want to see happen and manifest by the time of the games and be a legacy, and take responsibility for a corner of their world, and manifest whatever it is they want to dream and bring those benefits to Angelenos.
Yeah. I love that. And quickly I'm seeing that this is very much a panel of dreamers and doers, which is the best combination of things. And I want to get back to this point about federal funding, absolutely, and also just the role of national governments with local or state governments in terms of delivering games. But before we do that, Dale, I'm going to turn to you. We have, we're talking about how do we scale lessons learned. And so I want you to ground us a little bit in the experience of the Vancouver Games in 2010. That was, now 14 years ago, but I'm positive that there are best practices, lessons learned that you think could be applied, and how you all have already thought about exporting that experience to other global sporting events.
Okay, thanks. Maybe with the dreamers and doers, I think that's a good description for probably everyone here and involved. And remember being on a panel like this, getting ready for Vancouver 2010, and good facilitator asks you the question, okay, but what keeps you up at night? So get ready, that might be coming. And I remember one of the answers was, I sleep like a baby every night. I toss and I turn all the time. It's a pretty big thing to get ready to host the games. I'll just say that. It was great 4 years of my life, but I do appreciate it's like a kitchen round. You only want to do it once in your life. But yeah, what I wanted to do is maybe then bring in a little bit of, because we've had it even with the earlier panel and LA DOT and Metro is, you're going to get to a point, you think there's lots of time, it's 4 years, it's not much time, and then you realize there's only really 2 years left for the infrastructure. So I want to talk about the last 2 years and get you ready for that. And that's, it's going to be behavior change is really what you're going to need to get to focus on. And what do I mean by that is we knew we had to reduce vehicle traffic by 30% to be able to do all the things that we wanted to do as a host city to support like Sam and obviously all the spectators and everybody getting to the games. But we wanted to be that functioning, vibrant city that it had, like Laura said, all the special events, the live sites that you want to do. And so we really had to quantify that. And it wasn't like just doing together what we're talking about here amongst the agencies, but it was really everybody doing that. And so what we did is, and there have to be an LA version of this, is we scaled in, we called it Travel Smart 2010 Challenge. And we needed 30% vehicle reduction. So the 6 weeks leading up to the games, we had a very, everybody got involved, a campaign where we said, okay, let's get going here. That first week, we want to drop traffic by 5% and then 10 and just add it all up. And by week 4, if you do the math, if you're an engineer like me, you'd be like, well, I guess you better be at 20%. And guess what the media wants to do? They want to know what it is, right? And so I'm on the media and it's like, okay, Dale, what's it? And we're doing real-time traffic monitoring, all that, because you need to do all these kinds of things. And I said, it's only 12%. They're like, oh my gosh, are you going to fail for the games? Like, no, because everyone's going to do their part. Everyone knows how to get around, all the transit options, everything's available. Lime's got all the bikes everywhere, all these good things. But the real thing is it didn't really matter, right? At the 20% and the 12, what we were doing is we were having a 6-week campaign in the community to be getting ready to host the world. So there's going to be, again, an LA equivalent of that. And I think when we think of Matt and the sustainability, right? It's always behavior change. And all the legacy that you were hearing about from a transit, and in particular your rail, you're going to be able to leverage that so much. And this is a freebie for Sam. It's if you're wondering like what you call it, it's not like a car-free games. It's a people-first centered mobility plan. And it just happens to be quite a lot of different modes than what you're normally used to in LA. And then you have your own equivalent, behavior change, demand management. Let's all really do this together. So that would be kind of my main thing to get ahead of. And you got a couple more years for it, but that's your last 2 years of planning.
Yeah, I mean, I already feel better because I feel like we're 2 years ahead of the 2 years out. So we're actually on time. But what you said, I think, is really important for 2 reasons. One is you're sort of separating out what the infrastructure changes and infrastructure investments are going to be from what the behavior changes are going to need to be and what the programs are, the events are, the other things that we can do in order to sort of smooth traffic patterns in advance. So I'm going to go back to you, Ernesto, because I think most people in this audience know for the games themselves, $6.9 billion budget, another $1 billion on top of that for temporary construction. You all also might know that we've got a $7 billion package of infrastructure projects, right, that we were going to go to the federal government to get funding for. So Ernesto, maybe you could talk a little bit about what are some of the different alternatives for federal government funding, for cost sharing, for state partnership or whatever on those infrastructure projects. And then Ernesto and Laura both, I'm actually going to ask you to answer this question, which is, and then what's your budget? What are you going to do on the programming side and on the events side? What are you thinking about there?
Okay.
I can repeat those, Ernesto, as we go through. It's a lot.
Okay,
it's a
yeah.
lot.
No, I'll try to take it piece by piece. And I'll start by saying that I think from the last time, maybe this conference happened last year, we did narrow down the ask from 7 billion to about 3.2. It's still a lot of money, still, probably insurmountable.
Doable, yeah.
But it's, we realized that 7 billion was going to be probably impossible. So the 3.2 billion, I'll have to say that the 2 billion or so the most of it is the operational dollars that I was talking about earlier, right? It's being able to put out the amount of service that we need to serve the games, right? Beyond the service that because we don't want to compromise the service that we gave our customers today, right? So those are the operational costs. Again, based on the precedent sent by the federal government with the Salt Lake City games and with the Atlanta games, our ask to them is that we need those dollars as well. And then the rest of it, so about another $1 billion or so, are the legacy projects, and a shorter list of the legacy projects. If we don't get, and by the way, we're standing by our mantra is this are America's games, not LA, and we're standing by that, regardless of what administration is in DC. We think these are America's games because it's our reputation, I think, ultimately as a country. So that's what we're working with our delegations in DC, and we haven't lost hope. I mean, I think obviously there's a big change that happened, and the strategy may have to be adjusted, but we haven't lost hope on the federal side of funding. That being said, obviously we can't put all the eggs in one basket. I think we're also working at the state level, and we on our own are doing what we can to, let's say, put in as much flexibility as we can with the local funds that we have, right, to focus funding on projects over the next 4 years that are going to help with the games, right? There's some limitations to that, but we're doing what we can. I think where we have to explore even more now, and we were planning to doing this, but I think now it's even more needed even more, is looking at P3, looking at partnerships, cost sharing, as you mentioned. We haven't done a whole lot of that, but we're in the process of engaging folks to look at that even more closely. I'm sure there's a lot more Matt can say about that and others, but it's going to be needed because even the 3.2 billion seems like a pretty high bar. Within that 3.2 billion, I think the operational cost of 2 billion. If we don't get the 2 billion, we're going to have to adjust our service plans for the games. There's implications to that, right? Yeah. 2 billion is what we know we need to serve the games. So we're going to be doing some contingency planning, essentially, right? What can we do with, let's say, if we only get $1 billion? What can we do if we get only $500 million? 500, half a billion, and put those plans in place so that we can adjust accordingly over the next. And I'm sure you went through that to some extent in planning for the games.
Yeah, and just Laura, so asking the second part of that question again to you, LADOT has a legacy of big innovations and investments as a result of Olympic Games with ATSAC, the Automated Traffic Safety and Control Center. Is that what it is? Okay. System being, we're not doing acronyms today, being one of the biggest ones, so moving around cars and buses. Here, how are you all thinking about behavior change? Are you thinking about behavior change, or are you thinking about, how do we make services and technology that fit what people are doing right now?
We're thinking about all of that.
Yeah.
So just to note, it is the 40th anniversary of our ATSAC Center, which was the 84 Games legacy. And so really, it's building on that. Built in 84, obviously technology has changed and what we've, tried to keep up. It's really looking at not just where our technology is now, but it's looking ahead, especially as we're looking at how do we make sure that our ATSAC Center is communicating with Caltrans's Traffic Management Center, is communicating with Metro's RITS, and so making sure that, we're not operating in silos, but that we're able to be operating across agencies and in real time and sharing information. So absolutely looking at technology, looking at what I consider to be just fundamental infrastructure that is accessible. So sidewalks, curbs, bicycle infrastructure, particularly as we look around the venues. And then just a reminder that while the city of Los Angeles is the host city, there are a number of other venue cities that we are collaborating with. And so ensuring that the games experience is consistent across the board. And what that means is that for any spectator attending any games venue, that the moment they step foot on the public right-of-way getting to the venue, the signage is consistent. They can expect similar transit services, similar bicycle infrastructure, similar pedestrian infrastructure. So all of that coordination is taking place even as we're coordinating at an agency-to-agency level, as we at LADOT are already shifting resources, because to Dale's point, anything we want in the ground, my team has to be working on that now. Otherwise, if we start in year 2 and year 3, forget it. It's not going to happen. And so there's the agency to agency coordination, there's internal within LEDOT, there's internal within the city where we are already coordinating within the Mayor's Office of Infrastructure, pulling in the other departments for cross collaboration. And then there is also the coordination with the other venue cities and making sure that we are sharing lessons learned, we're facilitating, making sure that games experience is consistent. So a lot to be done in the next couple of years for sure.
Yeah, okay. Marie-Cécile, I'm going to come to you in a minute, and actually I have a couple of questions I want to ask you, but just to round out this sort of portion of the set of questions, Matt, I want to come back to you. And I think one of the things I'm a little bit afraid of as we've slipped from car-free to transit first, who knows what's next, is about sustainability. I mean, still as a region, we have quite ambitious climate targets. We've actually met many of those targets. And so for you, and as you're thinking about LACI and the Transportation Electrification Partnership, the roadmap, what do you think is the most critical for us to get right for sustainable transportation or for clean energy in advance of the games, so that we don't really miss that moment of having, just this ambition of having the greenest games ever?
Yeah,
I think that's our ambition. Yeah.
It's an important question, and to Laura's point, we've got to be able to, whatever we get in place that's going to require is truly infrastructure investment, in particular charging, and particularly heavy-duty vehicle charging for buses, let alone trucks and other vehicles that we hope to have to be zero emissions by the time of the games. We need to get that work done now, and so our staff, led by Jack Symington, did a research that we'll release soon, a roadmap that we did, a blueprint I should call it, with LA28 that looked at the temporary and mobile charging that could be used at ride and drive locations, it could be used for bus charging, and where do we put these assets? Where's there available electricity so that we don't have to spend a lot of time and money working with LADP or Southern California Edison on service upgrades. It can take years. And the cost that comes with that. So we've really been looking at innovation and how we can deploy charging more quickly, reduce interconnection times. We have been looking at things like flexible interconnection. How do you bring in distributed energy resources, a combination of storage, drawing upon power from the grid, along with some potentially for larger sites, solar, but vehicle-to-grid charging equipment as well. Like how can you use electric school buses to discharge into the grid to provide reliability during peak demands, as well as potentially use those buses, as I know Metro and DOT and LA28 are thinking about, is using school buses for games needs as well. So all these things mean we need to really begin to lean in and do investment. And so we've been looking at what climate investments can we help attract that can be catalytic. One thing that we did as an example is we worked with Congresswoman Annette Barragan to bring in $1.5 million earmark for a public charging depot site at Port of Los Angeles land. That will be the first public depot charging site at POLA. There's one at Long Beach. We then attracted another $9 million, including $3 million from Metro. That now Prologis, the bidder, will be selected, and the company will invest private sector dollars. Actually, I'm not sure if that's actually right. I don't know if we've announced the final winner.
I'm not doing live fact checking.
But
yeah.
But the private sector will be putting in additional investment into it. So how do we find those similar? Back to Ernesto's point of how do we unlock private sector investment with a seed capital from the public sector, and how do we bring in philanthropy that can be catalytic? They're not going to pay for billions of dollars of investment into infrastructure. But we know to get to our greenhouse gas emission and to our air quality goals, we do need to not just get more electric vehicles on the road replacing internal combustion engines, whether they're light duty or heavy duty. We need to get mode shift. We need people to get out of their cars. We need people to get into transit. We need people to walk and bike, and all those investments Laura is talking about are going to be critical. I think it's, how do we go and get creative now with this challenge that we're going to face, and hopefully, again, using the notion of America's Games, because it is our country on the world stage, as we saw with Paris. It's not just LA, and really get that sense of pride and opportunity to show the way. And we'll see. Hopefully, it doesn't just mean that Elon's, robo vans are become the vehicle that we're forced to use. Anyways, I think there's enormous opportunity here for us.
Yeah. Marie-Cécile, I was struck by so many of the things that you said around, that this was really a reflection of Paris, and that also the motto had been and always was games wide open. And I think maybe most of you know this, maybe many of you don't, but a lot of the games budget goes to security. It goes to making sure that these are secure games. And I was struck a little bit too about this idea that the games are embedded in the city in Paris, but that means you have to have like really tight digital, physical, other types of security. And so I hoped you could talk to us about that in Paris and how it changed how people experienced the city as they were either visiting it or just living in it.
First of all, Julia, you said we could answer a question you didn't
Please.
ask. So
Yeah.
sorry, I'm going to...
Did I say that? But yeah, we'll go with that.
To add another point, something we were really proud of when we organized those games is we not only hosted Olympic Games, but Paralympic Games too. Yep. And I think it's something really that you need to think about long time before, because on accessibility, you need to see how you will have exactly the same way to consider the audience for the Olympic and the Paralympic Games. And that is a real challenge, because accessibility for all kind of special needs has to be considered. So it is something really, I think, crucial that we need to look at and to think about. Security is many things. Security and safety is first for people, infrastructures, and cybersecurity. People, you've got, of course, people coming to see sport events, so you need to be sure that you don't have terrorist attacks and things like that. So that's why we came with block access. You can see the CEO. That put barriers to be sure that you cannot have cars coming in the venues. But also safety of the athletes. When you think of an athlete, he needs to go to one point really quickly to another point for their safety. So you need to think about fast lane, how they can get to the event. You even have to think about, when you speak about sustainability, of safety of their athlete integrity. When you say you have no plastic, but athletes need to have a sealed bottle to be sure there is nothing in the water they drink. So how do you have both security for athletes and all your ideas about sustainability? So you really need to have a large imagination to see all the different security aspects for people. Then you've got the security for infrastructures. This security for infrastructures is, for example, the maintenance of train. If you have a wonderful plan and you don't have people to repair maintenance, if you don't check the material that is being used more and more, during the Olympic Games, you might have a difficulty. And then you've got all the digital services around security. We made tremendous efforts on security with AA video surveillance, and we had also to face lots of cyber attack. So we had to really look at security different, all the different way, and even if you have all the apps and the mobility apps that you have to create for the audience, you need to be sure it won't be attacked, it won't be blocked. So security is really one of the main worry that we have when we organize these kind of events. And you need to think about all the different technical aspects, and then you also need to have people. So we had to train and to have so many people from private security, and so you have to have people to come from far away sometimes, and you have to have some police people coming, and then you have another problem. They don't know the city. That's quite funny, you know, when you go to see a policeman, and everybody thinks the policeman is going to help me. They say, where is the next, the closest station, metro station? It's from Clermont-Ferrand, I just don't know. So you really need to train people, because for all these kind of aspects, it's a long-time job.
Yeah. I want to dig in on a point that you made there, which was around private sector support and working both with companies in France and outside of it. And I know at the beginning you had sort of mentioned the 7 or 8 companies that are here. How did you all think about that? Did you want to go, France first in terms of the companies that were helping to deliver the games, or were you all looking for as many, foreign solutions as were relevant?
When you host games, I think you've got to go for the best first.
Okay.
That's clearly what you need to do. So, of course, we have a really good French companies, and they were really eager to participate in the games. So the tender were open for real competition, so that foreign companies and French companies could operate. And we also wanted to have the inclusiveness of small companies being able to participate, and even people from the suburb area. That's part of the legacy we might have time to discuss. So we needed to have the best technologies and also a way to be sure that we have French companies taking part, because it's also a way for us to get better. If you have a challenge like that, you have a deadline to think of new technologies, you develop, you make research and development, you develop. And what we did in France is also to have a way to accelerate process for innovation. When we discuss about safety and security, it's also, for example, the air quality. You need to be sure for athletes, for everybody that comes, that air is really pure. So we had a new technology in the village for the athletes that was developed especially for the games by a French company. The same company, maybe you saw we had the cauldron, where we had the flame. Yeah. And the cauldron was made by the French company. They also made some different facilities to purify air. So you need to enhance innovation through those different big events. And of course, it's also a race against cost. You need to innovate, you need to have the best, but also you need to be very careful the cost, because the taxpayer, of course, is not willing to add more from its pockets. So that is the real challenge to have that.
Yeah, and I think, private sector companies, innovation is one side of the equation, and then on the other side is certainly communities and those taxpayers. And Dale, I want you to talk about that, because one thing that struck me about the Vancouver 2010 Olympics, not that I was there, but maybe this is true, even just in conversation with you, is that there were feedback loops. Like, you all had established pre, during, post the games, from residents, from businesses, from spectators, what you did well and what you didn't. So how did you do that, and what did you find out?
Okay, and maybe I'll start with just the framing of the question that Marie-Cécile answered from security. So when we started going out to the community, everybody who's a transportation planner here would know, of course, it's always transportation and land use. So that became a point to talk to community, saying we're really trying to do something different as we host the world. It's really a lot of security that we have to work with, so it's a different type of transportation planning. That actually resonated a lot, because some people actually are, not necessarily favoring that you're hosting the games, and even if it's Canada's games or Americans' games. So that was one. And then the other is, of course, in good engagement, you want to be honest, right? So this is in the spectrum of public engagement. This is not consult. But it's more than inform. So we really framed it as being, we can't change, the days. There's going to be an opening ceremony that's already fixed. There's a size and a scale, and there's a certain, amount of movements that we need to support as a host city, but we can always mitigate. So we wanted to give the best information out at the earliest possible time, and then say, is there anything that you're seeing that for you as part of our community that we could mitigate? And how could we get back to you and see what we could do? And that really helped. And then the other was being available. I did, not kidding, over 100 stakeholder engagement presentations, and it would be interesting as you develop as a one team, because that's really what it is from the community perspective. It's not going to be between LA DOT or LA Metro or nonprofit. And so really, how do you build that trust So when I was out there as a City of Vancouver representative, I was representing TransLink, who was doing transit. I was representing the games often at time, but I was really wearing that one trusted partner hat because we were all in this together. The other was kind of then going back to sustainability. And by the way, we have change in governments in Canada too. So we had a mayor who was very sustainably minded, but that wasn't necessarily at our kind of provincial and our federal level. It just so happens to be when you're delivering the games and you're focused on sustainability, it's actually the most efficient and best way to move people, are the sustainable modes. So I would really try to leverage on that for the delivery of the games and your legacy behavior. So we were so committed to that, and because our long-term goal was sustainably minded, that we did a before and after monitoring. And then what we were able to talk about is that at that time, our 2020 goal coming out of 2010 was to be at 50% sustainable modes. We were able to tell the community, you did it. For the games, you got to, drum roll please, 60%. Now they said, hey, but you gave all that transit, you transformed streets into pedestrian corridors, you had wayfinding. We said, yes, now it's our job to bring that back forever, like we did for the games, but they had that living legacy with us, back to that behavior change. And so commitment to your data and your monitoring to tangibilize the success you're going to have in LA, and then that's an ongoing community conversation. And then the last part I'll say is, we haven't mentioned business community. Mehdi, Cecilia, you're giving good examples of like how it works at the venues, but here in LA, you need that business community to also be expressing this as well, because it's for their economic success, not just for the games, for the long term as well. And they chose to do a before and after survey in addition to what we did, and they were able to say 85% of Metro Vancouverites had a very good or good experience moving out the games, and then they put that pressure back on us as kind of the public agencies. This, get back to getting more transit, get back to actually doing more line, get back to doing more pedestrian wayfinding. So there's some examples.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. And with the short amount of time we have left, I'm going to ask Ernesto, then Matt, then Laura to answer this final question. This is a mixed audience here. We've got policymakers, we've got companies, we've got Americans, we've got folks from abroad. We probably have some donors, some investors. And I'd love for you to just talk about what your call to action is for them. Like, what would be helpful for them to do to make the LA 2028 games as meaningful as possible to this region?
Well, I think at this point is really all hands on deck for us, because 4 years is not a lot of time, or less than 4 years, I guess. We're going to do what we can on our end to facilitate those conversations. I think I appreciate, Dale, your perspective, because a lot of times we feel the same way. We feel like we're speaking for not just LA Metro, but many different other organizations, and that's okay. I think the whole point is that we're in this together. So we need a lot of support. We're going to be putting out solicitations. We're going to be doing industry forums like these. We need your help in ideation, in bringing proposals forward, whether it's money or ideas, but we need your support. And I think that they'll appreciate the perspective of, we have that vision, but we need to plan to measure that right after the game, so we can demonstrate that how good it was. Hopefully we get there, right? Yeah.
I would just say, a couple things. One, echoing what I said earlier, for Angelenos, there's an opportunity to take responsibility for some corner of your world to really help put whatever innovation, sustainability commitment that you want to have seen. And sometimes that can be existing resources and assets in our communities, and refresh them and reinvigorate them using the games as a sense of urgency and a catalyst, so that not just visitors see it, but it becomes a long-term benefit. Whatever that might be. It could be a community garden. Who knows what it might be. And the second is, how do we get creative given we're the unknown of the next Congress and the Trump administration? How do we work with the legislature and the governor to figure out what resources do we have that we can use to align on the climate investments, whether it's charging infrastructure, zero-emission vehicles, and the like, and the investments in safer streets for active transit as well. So I think we've got a big session coming up next year that we're all going to get creative, and a lot of people want their pieces of the pie, but we have to figure out how we prioritize all this.
What I would add to what Matt and Ernesto have shared is, there is a plan, and so my call to action would be, find out where you can fit into that plan and how you can help us deliver America's games. Private sector, community-based organizations, community members, you all have the capacity and the ability to deliver on things in ways that are different from how government can, but that doesn't mean we can't work together towards the same goal. And so don't wait to be asked, reach out, understand what that plan is, and offer to fit into that plan and help us deliver on the games.
Yeah, and just to make maybe one small edit to that, both Americans and non-Americans, right, help us deliver these games.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with that said, I want to just offer one more thing before we thank these absolutely fantastic panelists and people, and that is if you were born in LA or if you just arrived here today, if you walk about 3 blocks in, I think it's that direction, there's LA City Hall. And if you go up to the Tom Bradley Observatory Tower on a day like today, you will get a 360 view of LA. And you'll see the ocean, and you'll see the ports and the airports and Intuit Dome and SoFi Stadium and Griffith Observatory and the Hollywood sign. So it's really a wonderful thing to do as a tourist. And more importantly, you'll see LA Metro orange buses and helicopters and our transportation infrastructure. And you will get a sense of the immense challenge and the immense opportunity we have from doing the next 4 years and beyond very well. So I invite you to do that, and also invite you to really give a huge round of applause to these folks who have joined us on the stage.